So welcome to our remote transportation committee of Community Board 4 of Manhattan. Thank you for all being here. I am going to call on, hi Paul, I'm going to call on the members. So I'm Christine Berthet, I'm the co-chair. Dale Corvino is the other co-chair, and he may or may not be connected. And we were just joined by Colleen Chattergoon from the Department of Transportation. Hello, Colleen. And Matt High from Assembly Member Gottfried's office. Thank you, Matt, for being here. And I will go around and introduce the other members. Maybe that's easier. Martin Tritt, Jeffrey LeFrancois, Brett Furfer, Alan is not. Patricia Carnaval is on. Paul Devlin, David Warren, Sarah Appleton. I don't know whether you're on or not yet. Sarah, you have been.
I'm here.
But have you been appointed? Is she voting?
Oh no, I have not officially been assigned committee.
You are not a voting member yet. Gwen Billick, which is online, David Solnick, and Pete Diaz are the members that are present. And Brett, did I mention you? Yeah. Okay. So we want to go through the agenda. I think all of you have seen the agenda. The first item on the agenda is an update. And Janine, could you bring up, share the screen with the map?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and thank you for Janine and the staff to create that map. So these are the first 4 blocks of open streets that we have in the neighborhood. And I'm going to let Jeffrey discuss, give you a little bit of a market color there of what's happening, because he was responsible with the Meatpacking. You have to move it up a little bit for those 2 blocks. So how did it go, Jeffrey?
Sure. So full disclosure, everybody, I'm the executive director of the Meatpacking Business Improvement District. And these 2 blocks on 17th Street from 8th to 10th Avenue went into effect last Thursday. When we were setting them up, the police came by to check in and say hello. They were thrilled to see that the bid sanitation team would be responsible for setting them up each morning. Our public safety crew takes them down each night. It's 8 to 8 is the way the program is structured right now. We've had a mix of causes of flag and concern, mostly around that too many cars were violating, were pushing barricades aside and driving through them. And then of course, not pushing the barricades back together, thus leaving the opening for cars to more freely and flagrantly violate, the shared streets principle. The 2 main things that the bid is moving forward with about this is printing bigger and better signage. The city, I'll be very frank, supplied very inadequate signage. The sign they did use, we circulated throughout the Fulton Houses development there, which is between 9th and 10th Avenues. But the signs that we printed, they're 2 feet by 3 feet long. Shared streets in big bold letters, no through traffic, 5 miles an hour, pedestrian prioritization, pedestrian priority. Because really we see it as a means of education. I mean, it took 3-4 days for people to realize. The weekend, it was lovely. I took a city bike down there. I mean, I was down the middle of the street. I felt like I had to ride up and down that block like 7 times to make it worth it. And to me, it's serving the purpose that it's meant to. There wasn't a block party happening, which is, I think, a really good thing, because these were put into effect to create more space, not necessarily become a draw for the neighborhood. And my thing is just making sure that if people are complaining it's not good enough, finding out why they think it's not good enough, and then talking to the city about what more we can do to make it good. Just the final thing I would note is I was excited both personally from a community board lens and professionally from the bid lens, this block is distinct. The 9th to 10th block is, like I said, a part of the Fulton Houses development. So I had to work with the tenants association. We flyered those buildings. We put stuff, had signs dropped in elevators, and have had nothing, no negative feedback in any way back from that. So that's really great to hear. And then the block between 8th and 9th has some ground floor businesses, many which are not open right now. But it's a distinct block. There's a large city bike station on the south. Let's see, that's the northwest. It's the south side of the block on the north. It's the, gosh, my direction is off because I don't go outside as much anymore, I guess.
Northwest corner of 8th Avenue.
Exactly, and 17th has a large city bike dock. Another critical piece of feedback that I really was excited to receive was that day 3, I decided to move away from the chicane model. We had separated by about 15 feet the 2 barricades that we used, but cars were too freely going through it, using it as a through street. So we decided to make the barriers in a line with each other. And the suggestion was they were too close for even a cyclist to get through. So we pushed those out a little bit further. This week, the wrinkle is alternate side parking is back into effect for street sweeping. And that is tricky in terms of a management perspective. So we're playing that by ear. We have a very skeletal sanitation crew right now who's doing their best to keep an eye on this. Overall, from the bids perspective, we wanted these in the ground as quickly and sort of as best we could as possible, because we want to continue developing this with the community support, of course, to see how this can become a part of the neighborhood. And I want to give a shout out to Google, who, I don't know if you guys have been on Google Maps, but they have changed what the map looks like in these areas now, where the city has put open streets officially on the map.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went down to 17 between 8 and 9, and I saw people with a car coming through the barricade and then, closing it behind them. So they were very well behaved and very, going through very slowly. And also you added some cones on 8th Avenue, which helped a lot.
Thank you, Christine, for that. That was a really important piece of advice from you and from others, because there's a left-hand turn off of 8th Avenue there to go onto 17th Street. And instead of folks getting stuck right at the turn, we put cones, midway down, blocking that turn lane. So that didn't happen.
Hey, it's a whole education, so that's good. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the support on that. I'm happy the bid was able to help make this happen with the community support.
Janine, can you take that down? And then the other piece of good news we just got today is that the bike lane, the temporary bike lane on 38 and 39 are going to start to be installed in Friday. And that's really very exciting. That's big. So, and it's going to start on the west side, so that's very, very good. So we have Dale Corvino, co-chair, joined us, and Viren Bramrat joined us as well.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, guys. Okay, so we have done item number 1 and 2, and let's go to number 3. Do we have a representative of Frederic Fleming House here? Hello, how are you? You have to unmute yourself. You are muted. Just well.
Thank you. Hi.
How are you? So tell us a little bit about the what you would like to do.
Sure. I first want to just say thank you for allowing me to present today on behalf of Frederic Fleming House and Westside Federation for Senior and Supportive Housing. I do apologize for not having a PowerPoint ready for you guys, but we just got new executive orders from Governor Cuomo about new testing at our adult care facility. And so we have been frantically trying to work along that and dealing with COVID at the same time, but I do thank you for allowing me to speak today. We really desperately need a loading area in front of our building. With the parking situation, at Fleming House in front of the building, it does create a barrier for my frail residents to come in and out of, taxis, ambulettes, and even just having a food delivery. If I could just snapshot the 3 days of this week, first being Monday, the state sent us testing supplies for the staff, and it was a trooper and a van. It wasn't anything exorbitant, but we had to go the way the cars were parked. There was no space opening, so we actually had to go a door down or 2 doors down to retrieve the packages. Thankfully, that the gentlemen that came were able to help us to bring it to the facility, but it's that kind of obstacle that we are currently always faced with, and that was just on Monday. Tuesday, we had a resident who needed to go to transportation. They had a car service come and pick them up, and the car service was blocking because of the block is just a single lane. There was a FedEx truck behind that needed to urgently, go and continue on their daily route. So this created, it honks and it disturbs the neighbors as well on the block. So the car service had to pull down further, which created like finding another space for the resident to kind of go from the street to the car. And lastly, it was also on Tuesday that we had a food delivery. The delivery trucks are usually a trailer. They usually have to park on the avenues, either on 9th or 10th. And this particular day, the vendor had to make 3 round trips just because we had a large order. Normally it's about 2 trips, but today, this week it was 3. And that's pretty, that's, weight bearing and, going from 10th Avenue all the way down. We're like in the middle of the block, I would say, and then repeating that 2 times over. And lastly, I think the biggest concern is when we have to have residents go out in an ambulance. Finding a space for 1, the ambulance to park, 2, a way for them to bring their equipment into the building and then bring the resident out safely. It's usually kind of like a guessing game, finding a space that's open enough for them to pass with the gurney, to get the resident in and out of the building, which takes away time, from the event. And, response is really important when you're working with a critical and fragile community.
And so you would like, if I read your letter, you would like 2 parking space to be
correct,
right? Do you have the support of the Block Association?
We do. I know that Alan Oyster is also here on the Zoom call, and he's also in support of it. He is part of the Block Association.
Okay. Now, the committee, do you have any questions there?
I have one quick question.
Okay, Dale.
Martha, do you have, do your residents use Accessoride?
Most do. Some do use Accessoride, but most recently, because of their, sometimes they don't respond in a good amount of time, there's something that they can get through their insurance, and it's a medical transportation. And what it is they're contracted through like car services to provide medical transportation to or from appointments with their insurance.
I see.
Okay, so under normal conditions, they use Accessoride, but currently they're using medical transport system.
I'm gonna actually say normal condition is the insurance picks up the transportation, medical and if needed, then they'll use Accessoride for like personal things, but majority of the time it is the medical transportation.
Medical transportation, okay. Yeah, we might want to mention that when we outline the needs of this facility.
So anybody else has a comment in the public now? Yeah, Alan? Go ahead, unmute, right?
Hi. We did send in, Alan Oster, president of the 400 West Block Association, 21st, 22nd, 23rd Street. We're in complete support of this request. Fleming House has been here on our block since 1991. We have a great relationship with them. A lot of the residents who live near the home are friendly. We know most of them first name basis. We attend their events when they have them in the home. And I think the important thing really is the fact that from time to time, unfortunately, they do need access to the ambulance service. And a lot of times the EMTs have to go several cars down to find a space to bring out either a wheelchair or a gurney. So this is sometimes a life-saving issue for these folks. And we urge you to expedite this. We urge DOT to expedite the no parking loading zone as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. So I suggest we make somebody makes a motion.
I'm happy to make the motion, Christine. This seems very straightforward and something I'm enthusiastic to support. I would move that we recommend providing 2 parking spaces to the Fleming House as, I guess, would it be no standing or loading only? We should find out, Colleen, what's the appropriate.
Parking. What they do now is they say no parking, and that become a loading zone, right, Colleen?
It will become a no parking, but the Fleming House, is it a nursing facility?
We're an adult care facility.
You're an adult care facility, and do you you don't have accessorized signage?
No.
Oh, and you have ambulance services going there?
We have medical transportation, but not, the ambulance will come when we call 911.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because we don't have skilled nursing or medical inside the building. Our
Right.
residents have to go outside.
Outside. Okay. It would be no parking regulation.
Okay.
Okay, so
And I send Colleen.
thank you, David.
I know it's been very difficult for you.
Okay. So we have a second on this one.
Second.
Okay, second. So how do we want to do that? We want to say anybody has an objection. Anyone has an objection? Yeah. Okay. So Janine, can you write down all in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Absolutely. So the next discussion information is on a project that the Community Board 4 has initiated. If you recall, CB4 had some funds, that discretionary funds that were added to their budget as far by, I think, by the council. And they have done, the Community Board has done a number of projects with that. One of the projects was to evaluate evaluate the engineering feasibility of neck down, curb extension, or neck down on different location. And Sam Schwartz has done, who is an engineering firm, has done the work and found those locations feasible. And I wanted to just show everybody what it was. So maybe Janine, you can bring up the drawing and I'll tell you to what page we are going. So we're all aware of what's happening here.
Sure, I'll bring it up.
Okay, so stop right there, right? So the first one is at 17th Street. Long time ago, there was a fatality there, a young man. And this is a pretty wide, crossing, and it is at Fulton Houses. And we felt that this would be a good location to make a neck down so people turn slower there. So as you can see, those drawings show that this is the radius that is feasible, and therefore it's okay to do it. You want to go to the next street? I think there are multiple things which are the same thing. Yeah, keep going.
And that's where we have the open streets, Meatpacking's open streets, right? At that intersection to the east and west.
Yeah, yeah. It's at this corner. Yeah, it's the same. Keep going. We're still on 17th Street.
This one here is 25th Street.
No, what I see on the screen is, oh, here it is. Okay. So the second one was 25th Street. 25th Street is very close to Hudson Guild. Same thing, people are coming down and there is a fair amount of traffic turning there. And we have a school right up there at the next block. So this would be a good place to make a narrower crossing here. And that's one which is also feasible. So as you can see, you want to go to the next one. And the next one is 43rd. Okay. So on 43rd Street, which indeed is the corner of Manhattan Plaza, and we've had a lot of seniors, and I think people have said, you know, if we could slow down the turn. What we have done in the past is made that crossing much safer by doing the split phase signal. And now it's like UPS and FedEx turning around and going fairly fast. So the idea was to make that crossing much narrower, and here they have suggested to put it on the north side, because on the south side there are accessoride and the entrance of the building and other things that would be in conflict. So it would be on the north side and it would force people to go slower there. And then the final one is at 45th Street. So 45th Street is here. That would be kind of a small one, but important. This is where we have had 2 people killed crossing the street over the years, and lots of little trucks, FedEx, UPS come this way. So any message there that they should slow down, it would be really good. So the status of the project is that the design has been sent to DOT, and Colleen, would you have an update on that, or where is it?
Where is it? That's the $1 million question tonight. Well, I have to tell you, Sam Schwartz, we are reviewing it. Sam Schwartz staff reached out to us, and I think he's trying to schedule a conference call with Borough Commissioner Pinkar, but it is in the process of being reviewed. So give us a few more weeks on it, okay? And we'll keep the board posted on it.
Do we need to send a letter or what?
No, we don't need anything. No. You've done your part.
Okay, so Janine, you can bring that down. So, and we put that up because some people have been calling us and say, what is that? So hopefully by having, you know, Sam Schwartz doing this work, we can get that done faster with DOT, although right now there are so many things going on. So, okay, any question on that subject?
Yeah, I have a question. Are we talking about actually building the neck down with concrete, or are we just gonna paint it and put up those plastic things?
Paint and plastic. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if it's concrete, it works as a neck down. Where there are the plastic things like on 8th Avenue and 28th Street, the plastic things tend to get knocked by the cars a lot, so they don't really help with safety too much if the cars are going fast.
Well, you know, if it is a hard neck down, this is like a 5 to 10 years capital expense. So we definitely want to get it done first with whatever they can, and then we can take that and, you know, put it in our capital budget.
Maybe with planters.
Yeah. We could add planters. I mean, it was an idea of asking Jeffrey to put planters there.
You know, it crossed my mind too, Christine.
Yes,
so
yes.
we're looking at that elsewhere.
I mean, we know we're going to need a partner for maintaining those corners. So, you know, the Meatpacking would be perfect there.
Can I ask a question on that corner,
Yeah.
Christine? Is the neck down happening on the north or south side on 17th Street?
South.
Like where? Okay, that's good because that's like a very technical boundary for the bid, so it makes it.
Oh.
The south side means it's in the bid boundary, so it's a more useful conversation for us to have in that regard.
And then on 25th Street, we were thinking about asking maybe, you know, Hudson Guild or I don't know whom to help us on that. And the other two, 43rd Street, we're hoping that Manhattan Plaza will help. And 45th Street will need to find a partner there to do the maintenance and insurance and all that stuff, which is kind of silly. Okay, so we're ready to move to number 5.
I think this is great, by the way. I just want to let you know this is really good news. I'm still wanting one on 30th and 9th. I'm still pining for that, but yes, this is great.
30th, next batch.
Okay, thank you.
So item number 5, maybe Jeffrey could explain that a little more, because Jeffrey is the co-chair of the Parks Committee, and this initiative kind of came from the park side. So maybe you can explain what it is.
So the Hudson River Park Trust Advisory Council, which is a council that advises along what's the best interests of the park. That executive committee met in the beginning of April and wanted to send a message around creating more space for the Greenway, both from a cyclist and pedestrian standpoint. And the very quick recommendation they came up with was taking a lane of the West Side Highway and making it an extension of the Greenway. The executive committee sent that letter. Last night, the full advisory council met to ratify that letter. And of course, there were lots of questions, but it was universally adopted by all of the members of the council. And, you know, I think this committee does this a lot. Everybody had questions about the engineering and the turning off of this and turning off of that, and what does that do? And the thrust at the end of the day is that we're not the engineers, we're not the professionals. The point is to get this on the radar of the state and relevant city officials that this needs to happen. And we think it makes a whole lot of sense. And whether it becomes a northbound lane of the Greenway or a southbound lane of the Greenway, and we split that accordingly, I think is TBD. But community boards 1 and 2 have favorably taken up this letter as well. And so with 4 coming along as well, it would be full adoption of this as an idea, which is huge as a measure to make more space for cyclists, pedestrians, and park goers.
Yes.
The letter, so you know, went to the governor, the state DOT commissioner, the state parks commissioner, with a CC to the relevant city entities, the mayor, the borough, the DOT commissioner, Polly Trottenberg, Ed Pinkar, the borough commissioner, and our local elected officials as well.
So we have a copy in the folder you probably have seen. There's a copy of the CB2 resolution, and you know, which is essentially saying what Jeffrey's saying, recommending that the bike lane be moved to the, you know, to the to that lane, and then the other lane be kept for pedestrian and skateboard. And, you know, I really don't care how it works, really, like Jeffrey said. So do we have questions of the committee?
Yeah, I actually, and if it came up at the parks meeting, that I had to bow out for part of the meeting, so I might have missed that conversation. I actually had a lot of questions about this that I don't know how they get addressed, but you know, like, would bikes still be allowed on the bike path on the Hudson River Park, for example? You know, I'd have a concern.
Just a very critical point of clarification. The Greenway is not a part of Hudson River Park.
Yeah. No, understood. But if this gets built, does that mean that the Hudson River Park is going to say, okay, well, the bikes are going to go on the highway now, So the bikeway on the Hudson River Park is now going to be for more pedestrians. So that would be a concern. I think that relates a lot to how people bike around the area. So for example, if I'm going from point A to point B just for transportation needs, I'm not going to the Hudson River Park. I'm going to take city streets. But if I'm going for a recreational ride, I'm deliberately going onto the park. I don't want to ride on the highway. So, and I think a number of bicyclists are going to still want to use the bike lanes in the Hudson River Park, not the highway. So
I think there's a major point of clarification to your point, Brett, that cyclists are required to dismount when they're inside Hudson River Park. The Greenway is not a part of Hudson River Park. It is on state land. It is a separate entity from the park. Right. And so I think that's really important to clarify with the way that you're saying you're going to bike in the park.
The bikeway adjacent to the park. Well, so, okay. But the point is, if the bike lanes next to the actual park are going to now be designated for pedestrians, or assume that that's going to take the additional pedestrian load, does that mean that it's going to be difficult and maybe even dangerous for bicyclists to be in that bike lane? So that's a major concern, that the usage of the bike lane is more for recreation than for transportation. For transportation, people don't go out of their way. Some people do, depending on the route, but it's out of the way. If I want to get to, I'm biking around everywhere now because I'm not taking the trains. If I'm going to the Lower East Side, I'm not going west to get on the bikeway by the park. I'm going directly south. But if I'm going to take a nice Sunday bike ride, like I just did on Sunday, I'm going to go in the bike lane next to the park. So my concern is, if we're now going to create a separate bikeway on the highway, it's not really going to be addressing who's using that bike lane and what they're there for the recreation. That's just one concern. The other concern is it could cause people to change their habits, how they use that bike lane, how to use the park. And so when things sort of go back to normal, people have to be trained to go back to walking in the right place and not walking in the bike lane where the bicycles are. And of course, getting the state involved in a process like this is going to take a lot of time. By the time they actually approve anything or come up with something, we're going to be next summer already. So I kind of see this as maybe this is something that the Hudson River Park has to fix their congestion issues. And, we know where their issues are. Most of them are not necessarily in their jurisdiction, like the cruise ships area is not their jurisdiction. And that's where a lot of the congestion occurs, so we understand that. But our areas like Chelsea Piers, they do have control over that. That's really kind of a ad hoc bike area and walk area around there. So I'd have concern that we're not really going to be addressing the congestion issues that have always existed in the park. And I think it's moving. I think the focus really should be on getting to the Hudson River Park Trust and working with them on what can we do in the park itself to work on the congestion. The bike lane in the Hudson River Park is it's a temporary thing that probably won't happen anytime soon. So, and just one final point that I make is, once this actually occurs, I would have concern about potentially adding congestion to the West Side Highway, because long term, what we've worked so hard to do is to get congestion pricing. People are going to be counting on the West Side Highway to get around our neighborhood. So I'd be concerned the West Side Highway is going to be counterproductive to the efforts for congestion pricing. So those are just a bunch of concerns I want to put out there.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Christine, it's David. Just a comment, first a comment and then a question. The comment is, I disagree that the Greenway is used only recreationally. There are a lot of bicyclists who commute downtown from the Upper West Side, from Pell's Kitchen. They commute to offices downtown. I see it all the time. So yes, and it is also used recreationally, but it is definitely both. But what I didn't understand after Brett spoke is that so could someone answer the question? I presume that means that the existing bike lanes would no longer be bike lanes. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think this is specific. The CB2 resolution say they want the bike lane to move on the space gained from the highway, and then they want the space which is the current space to become exclusively pedestrians. So what they have proposed in their resolution is an allocation between the two spaces. We don't have to do that. We may just want to say, look, we want you to take over one lane of a highway and then look at the whole space and figure how to do it the best. I mean, my answer to that, I mean, just, I don't know.
I think that makes sense. I think that would be a better way to approach this than to dictate how it's used.
Paul had a question.
Just to clarify the congestion issue, the congestion on the park occurs on the weekends when people are not commuting to work. On a weekday, at least when I'm on that bikeway, I've never really seen considerable congestion. It's really the weekends.
The weekend, I mean, you know, the park, yes.
Yeah, those are people riding recreationally.
We still need to address it, right?
Yeah, I physically raised my hand when David spoke to agree that I personally use the Hudson River bike path to go downtown from where I am. It's much easier for me to go out to the river, down the river, and then back in than to try to go down 9th Avenue or something like that. So I personally use it that way. So when Brett made that comment and then David said something else, I sort of supported that. Okay, but my question is, how far north would this go? Because, and I put it in the chat box, that you know, that area where Comfort docked, for example, is very, very tight all day, all week. Pedestrians and bicyclists are constantly in conflict there. So that segment of the West Side Highway, just before it starts to go up the ramp at about, it's what, like 56, 59, where it starts to ascend onto the bridge. You know, if we could make it so that the West Side Highway, one lane, was a bike path, particularly from about, I think it's 55th Street, going south to at least 45th. And then I would extend it even farther from there, because the helipad area, all of those, all through the 30s, it's very tight in there on a weekday. Even now, this is not commuting, this is, and then on the weekends, it's ridiculous, you can't move. On the weekends, I actually ride my bike on the streets on the weekend rather than on the river, because it's less crowded now on the weekends on the streets.
Mm.
So the question is, where is this lane going to extend to and from?
Well, I think our purview goes up to 59th Street. This is CB4. So if we make a recommendation, we're going to make a recommendation all the way to 60th Street, which is the end of CB4.
I would suggest we actually do it to like 55th or wherever the West Side Highway actually goes up the ramp. We don't want to put in a request for an area that's not physically feasible.
Yeah, but yes.
But we're proposing from 14th Street all the way up to 55th Street is our proposal.
Is that what we're doing?
Okay, thank you.
Who else?
Beyond 57th Street is very narrow anyways, because there's very tight space between the bridge and the bike path. So I don't know exactly how they're going to negotiate that.
Well,
yeah.
Just to say, to Paul's point, I think 55th Street is the technical final top of it, where we to take the lane because of the way that it needs to reconnect with the rest of the Greenway, running up the rest of Manhattan, largely under the West Side Highway. So from a purview standpoint, that to me, I think that's the most technical statement we can make actually, is it should go up to 55th Street so it can reconnect to the rest of the Greenway. And that if we're going to adopt this, you know, again, to me, this is something we're throwing this out there because not only are we seeing an extreme number of cyclists on the road today, but imagine how many more there are going to be when folks are asked and some are required to go back to work. So this is we're planning here is the thinking, is my thinking behind it, as I hope the committee gets behind as well.
I just, if I might point out, I don't know, maybe other people saw the article in the New York Times, which was quite dramatic, that the bicycles are sold out. You
Yeah.
can't even get a bicycle in New York City anymore below $1,000 because of the huge increase in demand.
Okay, anybody else? The public wants to raise your, oh, Alan?
I think Gwen also had.
Christine, you've got.
Wait, who's,
I
hold on.
just wanted to say you have Alan, Gwen raising their
too.
hands in the participants.
I didn't see Gwen. Where's Gwen? Raising
She's
her-
calling
And
in.
your co-chair.
Okay.
And your
So,
co-chair.
Janine, tell me.
So Gwen has her hand raised. I think she's calling in. So Gwen, if you can hear us, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. Gwen?
Yes.
Yes, she is. Yeah. Hi, Gwen.
It's breaking up now.
You can speak. We can hear you.
You're going to try? Okay.
Gwen, are you ready to speak?
No, I just wanted you to know that I was there before you guys voted on anything, you know.
Okay. All right. And then who else, Janine? As their hands
So
up.
Dale and Alan had their hands up.
Okay. Alan?
Should Dale go first?
No, you should go first. We'll get Dale after them.
Okay. All right. So I have a question, and then I have a bunch of comments about it. So, are we asking, or are you asking to have lanes in that lane? Is that what? And everything else is going to be pedestrian?
No, we are. What we were.
Or one lane going?
We were just asking to get one lane of space
From the highway.
from the highway.
That'll only be for either a north.
To make it available to DOT to enlarge the pedestrian / bike path, which is called the Greenway. Now, we are not going to make a recommendation of whether that lane, once it's built, goes up, go down, you know, is dedicated to bike, is dedicated to pedestrian. We are not making that recommendation. I was getting the sense here that what we should do is ask for that lane, that space to be given to the DOT and for them to figure how to work it out.
Okay. All right. Then I have a couple of comments regarding safety, especially at the heliport. So right now you have 3 lanes of traffic coming down.
Mm-hmm.
You have the westernmost lane, which cars make a right turn into the heliport.
Right.
Up until recently, basically what would happen, it was up to the driver of the car coming in, the bike riders, and the pedestrians to figure out who was going to go in and how they were going to go in there, because they each have a green light going up and down.
Yeah.
It wasn't until some residents put pressure on the trust to have the heliport put someone on the bike path to help conduct the cars in. So basically, now instead of a car going over 2 lanes, the bike path and the pedestrian path, is going to have to make a right turn crossing over 3 lanes.
Yeah.
So depending on what's happening in those lanes, that car is going to sit in that lane waiting to try to get into the heliport, blocking traffic behind them, which is a safety hazard. A safety hazard for cars coming south and a safety hazard for pedestrians and bike riders in those lanes, because the heliport is always not doing what they should be doing in terms of protecting bike riders and pedestrians. The other issue is going further south. You've got 29th Street, which is a crossing, and 26th Street, which is a crossing, and 23rd Street, which is a crossing, which you're not going to be able to put barriers on those sections to protect anybody, whether the pedestrian lane or a bike lane, because people are not going to be able to cross into the park on those three. So you have the potential of possibly a bike rider somehow falling off a bike into oncoming traffic from those three intersections. So it's a great idea, but what I'm just saying that you can't just leave it up to, as Jeffrey said, you can't just leave it up to the engineers to figure this out, because the engineers will tell you, here's what you can do, put these barriers up, and you're okay. We need to be cognizant of the safety issues that are occurring with bike riders. You've got team riders that are out there that are going, I don't know what speed these guys going to. You're going to have younger people, kids now on these bike lanes. It's a problem. There's a consideration of the increasing pedestrians and increasing bike traffic, but it's not. The other thing I was thinking about, these Jersey barriers. They're basically V-shaped barriers, wider on the bottom. I think they're at least 18, maybe 20 inches wide, and now we're at the top. So if you're a bike, and maybe your bike riders like Brett maybe could help me out with this. If you're sitting on a bike, right, your vision is probably going to be somewhat above the barrier, and I'm sure they'll probably have maybe some fencing on top of it, besides just the barrier. But if you need to shift over, if you're riding north or south along the barrier, your vision is to the top of that barrier, which is further away than the bottom of the barrier, which is closer to your bike. So if for some reason you need to shift over, visually you might think you have more room to move towards the barrier for whatever reason, but your bike is going to hit the bottom of the barrier. So it's, as I say, it's complicated.
Right.
And I think if you're going to say, yes, let's go ahead with this, I think some of these issues need to be addressed in your letter. Someone has to, somehow figure out how these things are going to, be put into actual practice.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to point out those specific intersections which are an issue, and we should raise them in the letter for sure. I agree.
Unless we, get rid of the heliport.
Well, that's your job.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else in the public, or Dale, you had something? Janine?
Yeah.
Yes. Hold on, Brett. Dale first. Dale.
Okay. I tend to agree that there's probably going to have to be a hard barrier. I think that's the way of the yeah. And also, Jeffrey, I was just wondering, would one of your CCs be the State Health Department chair?
The letter was already sent, but that would have been an excellent idea. So I'm sorry.
Maybe going forward, if there's any,
to be honest, if something favorable comes out of this committee, my intention would be to rally our electeds around this cause, given the fact that it would be then universally adopted by all the boards that abut the park, and to see what our elected colleagues can do our elected officials can do to move the issue.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I guess this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's a good idea to get more space because we don't have enough space, right? We don't want to be the one deciding whether people should go up or down, or, obviously it needs to be with a hard barrier. It needs to be something really protected. we want to leave it up to the engineer and the DOT to figure what's the best way to allocate the space between the users. And we also want to highlight the safety issues at, 2029. I mean, at really every intersection, something we have raised before, which is every time there is a car turning, it's an issue with the riders. And we need to have a solution to all of those intersections. And maybe it's a red light for the cyclist, and it's a red light for the cars. I mean, they have to figure it out. And we need to include that into our proposal. The heliport is at what street, Alan? What?
30th Street.
30? Okay. So that's what I'm hearing as a consensus. And then we're asking to go from 14 to 55 or 14 to 58. What are we?
I think 55 technically is what makes the most sense, because you can merge onto the rest of the Greenway to go north.
Okay. So do I have a motion for that?
I just a question about the timing. So two questions about the timing. One, how realistically, how long do we think it would take to implement this? Funding, approval, planning to make sure it's safe. And the second question is, how long do we expect this lane to be a bike lane?
What do you mean? How long do you? What do you mean by the
From at what point will this now be a bike lane in the West Side Highway? Is it going to happen in July? Realistically, November next
Well, it's
spring?
a pandemic.
And the follow-up question is, how long
Literally
do
a
we expect
pandemic.
do we expect the bike lane to still be there when the COVID crisis is over, or is this really an attempt to make this a bike lane indefinitely, permanently for the next 20 years? Because if it's not going to get implemented until next fall or spring, and then we're gonna undo this. This is just a distraction from planning for congestion pricing, for planning to try to get rid of the heliport, all the other Senator Hoylman's safety studies that he's been doing to fix the West Side Highway, which are real and present. So if realistically we're saying that this is going to be a 6-month bike lane starting from November till next June, something like that, it seems like it's a major distraction from the important initiatives that have already been started.
I'm not sure I understand why it's an either/or proposition to you, Brett.
Well, if we're studying safety,
like we can do both. It seems like we can chew gum and walk at the same time. It seems like we can factor all of those in, and in fact, we can learn quite a bit from the safety conditions that we might need to address long-term with this short-term plan.
But the safety studies have already been implemented. They've already been, Senator Maham has already been studying key intersections. We've already had efforts to try to do something about moving the heliport. The congestion's happening in the park. It's related to the park. So it seems like we're kicking the can down the road when we're going to be able to address the issues that we've already been looking at for something that might be a bike lane that's going to be very expensive and have a lot of potential safety issues if we're, and unintended consequences that, it's going to be a 6-month bike lane.
Well, first of all,
it doesn't seem like kicking yeah.
I think that everything we're asking, which is temporary, some of the things we would like to keep it forever. We have been discussing the congestion on this Greenway a lot. The pedestrian can't go there, everybody can go there, everybody has been complaining about that. So I think that whatever we're going to ask, can they install temporarily, then they can learn and then they can keep it later on.
Regarding
wait, Dave. So to me, that's a strategy we have had to install things to learn and then see whether we want to keep it. And
that's a different strategy of saying we're trying to get a full-time permanent bike lane on the West Side Highway, because we've also been advocating for congestion pricing, and this is going to have a major impact on how feasible congestion pricing is going to be, because people using the West Side Highway might end up wanting to come in our neighborhood after because
so I think we heard all the comments, and we heard that you are not in favor of that. So I want to know whether there is a motion and a second.
Well, I just want to address the heliport.
And I want to make, I'm sorry, I like to have a vote. And if the vote doesn't pass, then we can go back and see.
Well, I'm in favor. I wanted to say
I'm not, don't let.
If we implement this will help close down the heliport.
David, you cannot speak until I give you the right to speak, okay? That's my prerogative as the chair. So do we have a motion and do we have a second?
I make the motion.
I second the motion.
Okay.
Martin did.
So do you want, Janine, do you want to call everybody one by one?
No, everybody in favor? Anyone against? Okay, abstaining? Present, not eligible?
All right, so that motion passes. And we will include the issues of safety very much, and the turning lanes and the hard barriers and all of that in the letter for sure. Okay, next item. Opening a lane of traffic to restaurants to comply with social distancing. I'm sure you have seen the document in your, so the restaurant associations have started to raise the issue that they are supposed to reopen, but they are supposed to reopen with twice as much space, and there is not enough space inside their restaurants to make the reasonable money. So if they have to reopen and they have to earn half of what they are earning, having all the cost of reopening, it just doesn't work. And so their proposal has been to follow up on the open streets concept and say, why don't we get one lane of parking or one lane of traffic, and we can then expand our footprint into that one lane and really have nearly full capacity as we are reopening. And the idea has picked up momentum with, restarting the restaurant industry, saving the mom and pop, saving the small businesses, and, having kind of certainly for the summer, an activity, an outdoor dining, much more like it is in other countries than the US. So the Business License Committee has already taken a vote to recommend a bunch of items. And the idea was we would look at that as a transportation and then amend that, and then we would have a joint letter. So maybe you can open that, Janine, so that we can share that with everybody and we can follow the item, and then we can open the discussion.
Okay, let me find it 1 second.
It says draft voted by License Committee. Wow. Okay, so these are the points that have been agreed by the Business License Committee. Obviously, it's a draft. The program duration would be this season, probably until October, the end of October, and would be reevaluated and reapproved for the following season. Location would be to do one moving lane or parking lane, I should mention that, on each avenue, 7, 8, 9, 10, dedicated to dining. You would not be authorized on plazas, on park, on sidewalks, or on side streets. The restaurant must relocate their sidewalk cafes, if they have one, to the dining lane, so the sidewalk is free for pedestrians. The hours will be the same as sidewalk cafe, which is pretty much 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. during the week and 11 p.m. during the weekends. There will be no music, no smoking, and all the other stipulation of their method of operation. It would service the seated patrons only, no service including alcohol to standing patrons. And the physical distancing, the patron would be spaced according to whatever is the guideline at the time, and wear masks if they are standing or moving, and the staff would wear the mask and glove all the time. The establishment would provide security and would be allowed to hire paid detail. That's different what it is today. There should be a consideration to how the public space is allocated between restaurants to ensure equitable allocation, because on some of our blocks, we have restaurants side to side, and we don't want, the small guys to be blocked. And there should be a mechanism put in place to prevent landlords from capitalizing on this amenity. We don't want the landlord to now start to charge a rent premium to those spaces. So do you have a comment about any of that before we go to the other consideration?
I have one.
Yes.
Why no side streets?
Well, side streets in business license, we have had a lot of problem when you have anything outside in the side street. The side streets are generally residential, and we may want to make exception for some, right? But generally they are very residential, and when you have patrons outside, it's very loud, prevents people from sleeping, and we have had a lot of problem with that.
What about if the time, this isn't like a bar with a 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. closing. This is 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. And perhaps on side streets, maybe it's 10 p.m. Weekend, 7 days a week, maybe.
What side street do you want to propose?
No, I'm not proposing a particular side street. I don't really, it seems to me that this will actually be more desirable on side streets because obviously there's not a lot of traffic whizzing by and not a lot of ambulances and et cetera.
Right.
So I don't.
Yeah, but that's what the business license committee agreed to, because that we have had a lot of problem on side streets.
But that's problem has been with bars, hasn't it?
No, it has been with everybody. Everybody was a sidewalk cafe.
I think it would wind up being on a case-by-case basis if it was ever if there was ever like a specific venue and a specific side street, we would look at the factors rather than try to generalize a side street proposal.
Yeah, Jeffrey?
I do think the side streets are important, though I recognize the concerns of BLP and they make a lot of sense, but I think that I've had the bids have been having discussions, the city's having discussions, and they've been made clear that there is a restaurant reopening priority plan that's being worked through. And whatever waivers they put into effect are going to have to be, I think, fairly broad and allow neighborhoods to apply them accordingly. So if we have a willingness to make these recommendations, I think that's a key thing we can do right now, to find a way to include our side streets, since my guess is the recommendation is going to come off in a rather sweeping manner if City Hall makes a decision on expanding sidewalk space or taking over parking lanes.
I'm not sure what you are saying.
Well, I think limiting us to the avenues is too restrictive, given that and this is just a guess, that the order from the city is going to be broad and have to be interpreted.
But we should, our guidelines should be what we want. Then we know that the city is going to do something else. We are not going to change our decision because the city is going to do something else. So we should really recommend based on what we think. I can tell you, being on the business license committee, the side street is a major issue. And I doubt that, I don't know that it would pass the full board, by the way. A lot of people in the side street are going to be really, really upset if you do that. So we know that the city is going to do whatever they want to do.
I also had a question about trash.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, we're looking to put trash, in the parking lane. And So if we're putting tables in the parking lane and trash in the parking lane, so is there a possibility of including something that if there's garbage in the parking lane, that it seems to me it would have to be fenced, there have to be some kind of separation, visual separation.
I think the message here is to say, look, we want to clear the sidewalks. I mean, you know, on the side street, there is no space on the sidewalk, but on the avenue, if they are going to make, to have a lane to put their tables and chairs, right? Once they are finished working, I would want people to put their garbage on that lane, which had the table and chairs. Obviously, that would be happening after they are finished, right?
Yeah, but you know, those lanes can be pretty dirty, right? And so you're gonna pick up the trash and then start putting tables down.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're talking about in the morning they're going to clean their lane, right? This is like a plaza. They're going to clean their plaza. They're going to put their tables on it. They're going to do their business the whole day. Comes 10 o'clock at night, they are going to close, and then they are going to put out the trash. My suggestion is they don't put out the trash on the sidewalk, but they put it on the lane where they had their tables, which is possibly the closest to the street where the sanitation comes through, right?
Yeah, okay.
So, well, so we have this open street. I'm hearing your comments about the side street. So first, inclusion, should 14th Street be included? Jeffrey?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think 14th Street in Community Board, specifically in Community Board 4,
yeah.
it could be very useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say 14th Street definitely should be an exception. I think 46th Street would be an exception. There are only restaurants there, right? And few residents, so that makes sense to say 46th Street would be. I think we need to exclude blocks with bus stops, especially if you're on an avenue. I mean, you know, the buses cannot be coming so close to the tables and everything.
That's a lot. You mean that's a lot of blocks, isn't it?
Well, that's 1 every 2 blocks.
Right. But do you need to exclude the entire block for a bus stop at the beginning of the block?
I think so, because if you see Manhattan Plaza, for example, once the bus start to move in, it needs a lot of, you know, easing in that space. I mean, we could ask for half the block, but you know, half the block is 100 feet and the bus is 60 feet, it's 50 feet long. So for the bus to move in, they need kind of 75 feet, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I might have missed something because my connection got broken and I had to come back. Are you thinking about 14th Street as a site for this initiative?
We just had that talk with Jeffrey, yes.
I mean, isn't 14th Street a truck route?
Yes, yeah. It is the TTP now. But
yeah, but there's a lot of space on the side, which is unused.
And all the avenues are truck routes.
Yeah.
The avenues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. So, I mean, you know, if we say for the avenues, it's good for.
So a truck route does not preclude this treatment of lanes within the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was concerned about 8th Avenue above 23rd Street, because above 23rd, what we have is a lot of residential, Penn South. And then we have the post office. And then we have the whole section where a lot of people are walking in the street, right? So I don't know that we can, then there's a fire station, then there is residential.
You know,
whether above 8, right.
Christine, I think that those are all
the things we take into consideration whenever we do things, but in pre-COVID times. The recommendations outlined in the BLP adoption where things end at 10 o'clock. The New Yorkers that are here, I think, are going to be really excited to support their local restaurants. And I think that there's a willingness to be a bit more flexible, perhaps, in how tolerant people will be. And so I think we should try to go a little bit further than we ordinarily do. I'd be willing to see the debate at full board. And the argument is, okay, then you know, that restaurant, because of where it's located, is not as able, it doesn't have the potential to be successful like some of the others do in our community. And that everybody should kind of get that fair shot, given what they've had to endure the past couple of months and what will likely be a few more months.
You know, the 10 and 11, Bookman from Robert Bookman was there at the meeting from the, who is there, the lobbyist of the restaurant association.
Restaurant, yep.
Yeah, and he was totally fine with that. He thought that was fair, and that was, the CB3 has put the same numbers there.
They put restrictions in play in terms of the residential?
Oh, street, no, I don't know. The street is a different issue. I think we should put it on the table as a discussion.
Hey, I just want the committee to know that we are having discussions about this, just so that you know. And I'm sure we'll share something with the community board once everything is finalized.
Christine, I would just sort of put, I would use your argument that, you know, I would support in support of Jeff, but using your argument, Christine, that this is, you know, this is a pandemic. You know, this is something that's happening as a consequence of the pandemic. It's not necessarily permanent, and therefore it's an experiment. So, you know, we're seeing, you know, we'll see how it works on side streets, and if it doesn't, you know, this has a sunset clause in it. If it doesn't, it sunsets.
Okay.
Christine, one of the issues that I'd like to raise, I've had my hand raised for a while, and
oh, I didn't see you.
yeah, I know. That's why I just blurted out. Other people have spoken before me, and Brett has his hand raised too as well. One of the when we talked about shared streets, I suggested that we remove parking lanes. This language has a removal of a moving lane. I would, in my area on 9th Avenue, I don't know that it's fair to take one lane. I think we need to take two, because both sides have enough restaurants that I would say take one moving lane and then the parking lane to allow restaurants on both the east and west sides of 9th Avenue to exercise this space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm an advocate of removing parking lanes rather than moving lanes.
How come I don't see the, okay, I don't see the raised hands. So
you have to have your chat window open, or your participants window. Sorry,
participants open at the bottom. Of the hands show up on participants, and there's also a whole lot of other options like how to vote on there.
Got it. Okay. So I have all these lines. So Paul, Dale, Brett. So Brett or Dale. Dale, go first. You are muted, Dale. You're still muted.
Brett is next. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay.
My hand was raised from before. Yeah, okay.
So Brett.
Okay, yeah, so just a couple things. So first, normally I would be opposed to letting restaurants use the lane, but I understand the extenuating circumstances. But that first item, the part that I would have a very hard time supporting, the line where it says to be reevaluated and reapproved for next season 2021. I think we just strike that. You know, if we want to put some conditions, say, you know, this is, you know, only for this 2020 unless there's an epidemic next summer. So it shouldn't be about whether or not we like the restaurants. It should be about whether or not there's a pandemic where people have had to stretch themselves out, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to remove them whether we like them or not. That's my concern about that. The other concern I would have about the side streets is if we can't remove both sides of the parking on both sides of the street, so only one side would get the restaurant, the other side, the restaurants would have to, they wouldn't have the advantage of the street access. So unless the sidewalks, unless the streets can put restaurants on both sides, I don't know if the side streets can accommodate that. So maybe that's the case we're making, why it would be a case by case process, but we have to be aware of that.
Okay. And Paul, you still have something, or you said what you had to say?
Christine, just a little follow-up on that, on Brett's. It shouldn't be contingent on whether there's a pandemic. It should be contingent on whether the restaurants have, it should be much more specific than that. It would be contingent on whether the restaurants have had to reduce the density of their patrons. And that may or may not be, that's quite different from specifying if there's a pandemic.
I agree with that. Make it tied to the reason why they've had to use the street, not, yeah. Good point.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I lowered my hand. I apologize.
Okay. So, all right. So I think we are, what I'm hearing that there's mixed feelings about the streets, the side streets, right? I'm hearing that we are okay on the avenues. We are even in some cases recommending 2 lanes on the avenues. I'm hearing a little concern about the sidewalk and the time of the day, but I think this is a BLP decision more than our decision here, because we are more about the space. So I would leave it up to BLP to make that decision. Then we're talking about side streets or not. That's something which is at the intersection of BLP and us, whether we want to recommend that side street be included. BLP was pretty strong that they would not. So we would have to reconcile that and revote all that stuff. And then I think I heard 14th Street was fine. I heard 46th Street is fine. Some of the blocks are not eligible probably. And then we can have a discussion on food vendors now. But before we talk about food vendors, so if we were going to make a recommendation based on no side streets, do I have and possibly up to 2 lanes on the avenues, do I have a motion on that or not? Or do I have a consensus on that? Anybody opposed to that?
I do have a clarifying point to something that Paul brought up before that I initially agreed with, but I think I might disagree with regards to eliminating the moving lane. To me, it's important that these spaces be protected by a parking lane from a safety standpoint, much like we like our, they're not perfectly protected, but how our protected bike lanes are often buttressed by a floating parking lane. And so I guess I would want to apply the same logic in that regard. And if that's on the table as a part of this as well.
The problem we're going to have with that is that on a lot of the avenues, you don't have a parking lane. Like you take 9th Avenue, the left side, the west side of 9th Avenue is a bus lane and it's a moving lane. So if you take a lane, you're not going to have anything to install a parking lane next to it.
Yeah, you're right. I guess I just wanted to hear that as one of the reasons why it doesn't stick fully and that we'd have to have a more flexible approach. So yeah, I'm going to support it regardless, but I wanted to lay out that logic. So no, Christine, what you say is now what I agree with. So yeah, both sides need to be able to have it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's not necessarily protected by a lane. It may be more like a street seat. And you are pretty close to the traffic moving.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Should we include language like that, Christine, that we want to see some sort of temporary structures like street seats to protect the diners? I don't know what we're calling them, eaters.
I think we should. We should make something like a street seats. I mean, you know, when we describe what it is. Some people have already called for it, so I think that must be what the DOT is talking about too. Yeah, we can raise that. So back to the side street, what do we want to do about the side streets? Do we have somebody making a motion about that? I just want to make sure I'm not, you know, that we have a full discussion about it. Yes.
I just have a comment. I recognize everyone, many of the people who have commented, many of the board members who have commented, are looking to make the rollout as equitable as possible to as many of the restaurants as possible. And I feel like you know, if we can outline that we will have a certain flexibility with regard to specific instances, but it's unfortunately, it's not going to be fully equitable. It's not going to benefit every single restaurant equally. And so, I mean, I think the best we can do is scaffold, you know, a kind of flexibility in to consider case-by-case circumstances where we would, you know, bend the rules in order to accommodate a participating restaurant.
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
yes,
I wouldn't expect.
Hold on, David. David, you have to raise your hand. Brett.
Just two transportation-related issues with this. So one more just technical, and I'm assuming this was the intent, but it's not in the points that BLP has. I'm assuming that the length of the street space allocated to a restaurant would be not to exceed the length of their business storefront. Although, because the concern is if they're longer, they're going to start taking up delivery space and things like that, which could lead to double parking and more dangerous conditions on the street.
Yeah, that's not clear. In fact, the item which says careful consideration should be given how public space is allocated, intended to cover that. Because if you have, you know, two restaurants on the frontage who say, I want to take all of it, and the other guys say, I can't and I don't want to.
Well, I'm more worried you have one restaurant on the block and they're going to take 100 feet of space when they've got a 60, a 40-foot storefront, and that's gonna take up delivery space and whatnot.
What I'm saying is that you know, that's one thing that I want someone else to discuss.
Yeah. It should be clarified but the transportation concern is if the restaurants now take up the entire lane, that other things that are going to be necessary to put on the street will cause a congestion on the streets.
Yeah, to respond to that, by the way, one thing which is not in there that I wanted to raise was we may want to ask that all deliveries be done before, 9 o'clock. Let's say they start. You don't want to have the restaurant and then the delivery guys outside of it line up and then crossing the tables to deliver stuff, right?
Right.
So we need to ask that all deliveries related to those restaurants be done before they open.
Well, I'm also thinking, food delivery. But the other transportation related issue I have, with the street seats and things like that, we've been very good about making sure that the sidewalks aren't being used by the business so much. We do that when we talk about sidewalk cafes. So a lot of the businesses, the way they've been able to support themselves but without being able to open up their restaurants for seating is the takeout
So I'll add that. I get it. I'll add that somewhere in that.
Well, I think they should be an either or. I don't think we should allow for takeout service on the sidewalk in a restaurant that's also using street space, because then they would really congest the sidewalk, and that would.
I think we said maybe it's not explicit that anybody who get that new space would move all their operation to that new space. They could not use the sidewalk anymore.
But I think we should specify takeout specifically, because they might say that that's not the same thing as table service. It's a different operation. So I think we should specify that. That's
so
fine.
I have David and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, just partly a phrasing of this. I don't think the side streets should be. We should say that this is that we're going to bend the rules for side streets. That's not the phrasing I would use. I would say that we want it on avenues and on streets. It's on a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't express it as we're opposed to streets unless. I would just express it as a case-by-case basis. And then regarding the issue of whether it extends in front of a neighboring business. What if that's with the permission of that neighboring business?
Well, yeah, I know.
I mean, I think then, it would be fine.
Yeah.
I agree with that, David.
I agree. And then Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. I want to flag that we're tailoring this conversation to restaurants. However, phase 1 of the governor's plan allows retail curbside pickup. I have received phone calls directly and heard around town of the intention of retailers to set up pop-up tents, of what they have to do to get that application, of what's going to be permitted, what type of sidewalk space they can occupy. DCA has a rule change out right now around stoop line changes, but we should not just be thinking about space for restaurants, which is our go-to because they already occupy sidewalk cafes. Retail queuing is going to become a thing, as small boutiques are only allowed to have X number of people in at any given time. When you think of the large retailers as well, there's no question that's going to be a thing. So to me, I don't want to put ourselves in too small of a bucket here when retailers are going to be under pressure to adapt to the demands of the consumer as well, whether it's pickup, fireworks going up into Clinton Park right now, whether that's
shooting himself. Okay.
Curbside pickup, or when they're allowed to reopen, queuing of customers, I think is going to be a real thing. Sorry, it's apparently the 4th of July, of concern. So I raised that.
So that's a very good point, but isn't it that we are, in fact, this is the reason why we want the sidewalks to be really clear, is because there are going to be a lot of uses of the sidewalk.
I agree with you. I guess, it's thinking about how that's applied, and should a retailer be taking up that curb lane likewise as the restaurant is being allowed to, or should this, I look the other direction of, should we be looking at more the shared streets model away from the avenues and on the side streets, which doesn't work in all cases, and keep the cafes on the sidewalk and put people in the street. But I am worried that retailers are going to require considerably more space than we ever expected them to need.
So what are you suggesting then? I mean, do we have a point there? I mean,
our committee, our committee is
transportation, right?
Exactly. So
to Jeffrey's point, yes, the grocers are already.
Yeah. But the point is that, so what are we saying in the frame of this discussion, of this resolution? Are we saying that we want all the queuing to be on that lane, but not on the sidewalk?
Can I make a suggestion how we might address that?
Okay.
So I think we should somewhere along the way state that our committee has consistently insisted on 8-foot clearance on sidewalks, that as we're so concerned about social distancing, that regardless of what gets approved and what location, that 8-foot clearance on the sidewalk is still going to be a required consideration from our part.
And we need more, because 8 foot is, you can't even have people crossing.
If we want to get to 12 feet or whatever it is, but I think as long as we state the
yeah, I think that's a
concept.
good idea. I think that's a very good idea to do it this way. Okay, so now the last piece, I think we are very close here. Now the last piece is about, so deliveries, are we in agreement that they should do deliveries before, before 10 o'clock?
Yes.
Yes.
Because if we take like already 2 lanes and we put the deliveries on the top, then we don't have anything left, right? So deliveries should be done before 10. And then the final thing is the food vendors. So already today, there is an op-ed of the food vendors saying, hey, everybody is, taking streets, and what about us? And we all know we don't like the food vendors, and we certainly don't like them on the sidewalk. I wanted to make a recommendation that we go and say, and the food vendors, what we want to do is we want all of them to be in the parking lane. And I would put them on the street side, on the beginning of the streets, not on the avenues. Because I think we need to define where they go. Otherwise, you're going to have food trucks coming into the new lane of the restaurants and the retail and all that stuff. So my thought was, this is the way we allocate the space. And for the food trucks and food vendors, it's a big victory, because they were never allowed to be in the parking lane. And they have wanted to do that for a long time. So then I would say, okay, they have the priority on the corners, at the corners.
Corners of side streets only, or just, I was a little confused by what you're
Yes, on
proposing.
side streets only, not on avenues.
Basically, they become the daylighting entity of the corner to an effect,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah. And so we define where they can go, and we say now they get that. They have to not be on the sidewalk, because obviously we need the 8 feet, 12 feet, whatever, right? Because that's the first concern about the pedestrian, and we reconcile all that stuff like that.
I'm supportive of that completely.
I support that.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
I'm a little concerned about that. If you're putting them on a side street on a corner, that's a residential block. It's a food truck that has a running generator going all day with the exhaust coming out. For a residential block, I think that's a nightmare.
But isn't it where they are now? They are on the sidewalk anyway.
Not on residential side streets, they're not.
Because they don't go there, but they are permitted to go there.
They're usually on the avenue.
No, most of them, like today, if you look at 8th Avenue, most of the vendors, I would say 99%, are on the side streets.
But is there a distinction between the food trailers versus the food trucks? Those, like the halal place on 23rd is a trailer that they put on the sidewalk versus a food truck, like an ice cream truck that parks in the parking lane.
I don't know if you're talking about like a hot dog stand, or if you're talking about a food truck that's got like grilling inside, and I don't know which one you're talking about.
No, we're talking about the food, the hot dog stand or the halal stand.
Oh, okay. The big difference than like a big food truck.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about food trucks.
Okay.
But Christine, I think it's then important to make that distinction in our language.
Yeah. I'm making a note.
And I think it just around the language, Christine, that it would be, we need to encourage basically citing guidelines, and that they should be cited to these particular areas. because the city has citing guidelines for so many things. To get them folded into citing guidelines would be pretty critical.
You mentioned, Jeffrey, that the DCA is changing Stoop stuff. Tell us about that.
So it's called Stoop line regulations, and it revolves around. It's really about what retailers, what we see is retailers can do on the sidewalk and not do on the sidewalk. Just for example, if a retailer did want to get a permit to put that 10 by 10 pop-up street on the sidewalk or in the curb lane, it would cost about $3,000 for the day to do that.
Right.
They can't transact on the street. You know, of course we know A-frame regulations because of our concern around all that kind of stuff. So there's a rulemaking process they're going through right now that was actually all pre-COVID and doesn't have anything to do with this. But there's a lot of push right now to have DCA make sure they're looking at retailers and their ability to potentially transact on the sidewalk or queue, even just queuing. You know, has become an issue. In Soho, this is a major flashpoint around stores that, you know, will release a specialty sneaker and they have to take out permits to do sort of club-like lineup like we're used to. So these are all things that are being talked about and looked at
meanwhile, nobody is paying attention to the pedestrian who have to walk.
Christine, you're exactly right. And so that's why, to me, it's critical of we have all this space in the roadway. So how do we best provide for our sort of what we see as you know, our neighborhood's livelihood, the retailers and restaurants appropriately?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that, usually because DCA does the worst job.
I agree with you.
So should we put something in our, wait a minute, I've lost completely everything. Oh, here you are, but teeny tiny, you're like, okay, so should we include something here saying, I think Brett's point about, you know, our plan is really to have at least 8 foot and probably more like 12 foot to start with, right? And then for the stores, how do we send comments to that DCA rulemaking?
Maybe we need to send a preemptive letter just to say we've heard that you're considering.
Yeah.
So it's a separate letter, and just make it clear that this is something that we're going to be concerned about.
Okay.
But I think it's through the lens of pedestrian prioritization. Yeah. But that we recognize business does, you know, retailers need additional space, but it cannot come at the sort of detriment.
It shouldn't be on sidewalk, it should be in the street. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah, we should have a separate letter on that. Okay, so we're ready to have a motion with a zillion of things that I have picked up. What happened?
Doesn't the public speak on this or no?
Yes, the public speaks on this, but I've lost everything. I don't know where I am. Oh, here it is. Okay. So anybody has raised their hand to speak? Nobody has raised their hand to speak. The public. Do you want to speak on that? Public is exhausted. Okay, we are exhausted too.
I'll make a motion.
You make a motion? Okay.
On those 2 letters.
On
I do think that, Christine, on the restaurant letter, that should go to DOT and DCA. DCA is the regulating agency behind sidewalk cafes, and DOT has purview of the street. So.
Well, I'll circulate that to all of you. You can add your comments, okay? Because
I second the motion.
With all the things we said, I'm sure I'm going to forget something. Okay, so all in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
All right. Against? Present, non-eligible. David, we don't know what you're saying because you're not, we don't see your picture.
I said yes.
Okay, good. Gwen, yes?
Pete, yes.
Pete, yes. Good, okay. All right, that was complicated enough. All right, what's the last item on the agenda is budget. Janine, can you bring up the little summary I made? So essentially, what when I looked at the cuts, DOT has cut everything on Vision Zero, everything on doing more bike lane. Here it is. My God, everything is floating around on my desk. Okay, here. So I showed there the cuts. The NYPD cuts are 4%. The TLC are increase funding. Transportation is 552. And the community board is 15% cuts, by the way. And then when you look inside transportation, Vision Zero funding is 7 million. Better Bus Initiative is 5 million. Traffic Enforcement Agency against placard abuse is nearly 1 million. And NYPD has cut 228 on idling enforcement. So essentially, everything we want to do, they've cut.
No.
Yes.
I mean, if I could just comment that the letter should lead that every potential greening initiative, basically every non-car focused initiative was put on the chopping block first, including the priorities long held by this administration under the guise of Vision Zero.
Zero, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So I've made this comment before, but I think given the budget issues we're going to be facing with COVID-19 and the lack of federal funding, my feeling is that our priorities should be on housing, health and safety, and education. And a lot of
that's not our discussion here.
No, I know, but the point is that from a transportation perspective, bike greenways, bike lanes, bus lanes, any expense that's connected to something that is not related to public safety, health of our citizens, and housing for our citizens, food for our citizens, and educating our students. I think we have to be realistic to say that this budget that we're going to face in 2021 is going to be so tight that I think the point is on this issue, Vision Zero is a public safety issue, and that can make some sense. But everything else, I support the cuts. I mean, we're going to have a very hard time, and I don't want to have us be arguing things that don't make sense in the long term, given.
So there is, there is a budget meeting where we're all going to come from all different committees and discuss that, right?
Yeah.
But I think the Better Bus Initiative is pretty critical in the sense of having people moved. I mean, if they can't go to their job and we get back to having a zillion of cars, we're not getting in the right direction here.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But to frame it as public transportation is more like, to use language like car focus, we should eliminate car focus, fine. Which means supporting public transportation, fine. But I think we have to be conscious of the fact that we have a very, very tight budget.
Yeah, I'd like, between you and I'd like NYPD to lose about 25% of their budget.
Madam Chair.
So allocation between those departments is absurd. I mean, NYPD is keeping adding guys that we don't know where they get them and what they do. And so, I mean, that's another way to look at it.
Madam Chairwoman, I think I have a point of departure with Paul. I think these priorities are extremely important. I think that it's, as I told you privately, this is sort of like the monetary policy during World War II and post-World War II. That's what transportation is. It's not at the forefront of people's minds, but it's the backbone. If we don't do it right now, if we don't do it correctly now, we will be paying the price in the post-pandemic. So we've got to get it right as we ease out of the pandemic, budget-wise and structural-wise, and in the post-pandemic, because this will affect the future for generations and generations. And to paraphrase Churchill, why waste a good crisis?
Well, I think Vision Zero and buses are both very important, because, you know, if people have a house but they can't go to work, we know what's going on now. This is not, I mean, this is, to me, transportation from that standpoint is like part of a housing. You go get a housing which is cheaper, and then you need transportation to go to your job. So it's you know, if you don't have a lot of money, this is pretty critical. I don't think that the enforcement agency for placard is critical, and the idling enforcement is why would they need 2 million to educate their guys on, you know, looking whether somebody is idling is beyond me. I think it's a complete absurd, plus it's a health issue, but it seems to be a waste of time and money, and how they are doing it is really ridiculous.
Agreed.
The intersection, if they have 100 less guys, that's fine. That's anyway, they are just waving at cars, so who cares? Anything else?
Can I just add, you know, I always say that my favorite agency is DOT because it literally touches I know Colleen, it's true. Because more than any other agency, as soon as you step out of your building, it's all DOT.
Yeah.
No matter what mode of transportation, your feet, your bike, your subway, your bus, your car, it's DOT. And it affects New Yorkers more than any other agency does on a daily basis. And to Christine's point, it's why I feel so strongly that to do cuts to improve bike transit when we're gonna have more folks getting on their bikes because they're afraid to take the subway is at the detriment of the idea of getting people back to work. And as more people move to less expensive neighborhoods, as Christine pointed out, the more important transit becomes. It's an equity factor to me that if there's universal bus lanes across 5 boroughs, everybody is going to ride them because it's the best method and way to get about town. And it's my long-held struggle of why transportation cuts are taken the way that they are. And it's why I always am steadfast in the argument. So I would hope that we can find a way to prioritize our budget.
You know, what I'd like to say is that what I like to see is them not reducing Vision Zero. The Vision Zero is really about, you know, saving lives, saving people, etc., and the bus. And then the rest of it, they can have it. And the 228 on the idling is just a mismanagement of money. I mean, they shouldn't have to spend 2 million to get people to enforce idling. That should be part of their book already.
So Christine, are you looking for a motion on this? Is there in the Parks Committee, we just repurpose our previous recommendations?
Yeah, so that would be the message. That would be the message I bring to the shared committee, you know. So Paul, you wouldn't agree to the Better Bus initiative? You would say just the first one?
Well, I wasn't going through line by line. I can, but I know that you guys, the budget task force meeting on Tuesday, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, what we did at Chelsea Land Use, we asked people to send in comments to me and Betty, the other chair, so that we could compile them from the committee, because a lot of it wasn't done in advance. But so I don't know if you're looking for very specific recommendations, I can go through and make those, but I didn't think we were going to do that.
Yeah, I think we have, these are the cuts proposed, and we have to say, well, you want to fight those cuts or not. That's all we have to say here. You know, and I would want to fight the first two, but send me your ideas then. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I don't know who's typing, but it's coming loud and clear.
It's Martin. You can tell because on speaker view it pops his face up.
Okay. David Solnik or anybody else of the committee, do you have any thoughts?
Can I ask one other question then? Because this just shows the reduction in the budget, but doesn't show what, and I can't scroll up and down. It doesn't show what the % of that budget is. You know what I mean? Like, is a reduction of 7.3 million?
The budget is 1 billion transportation. 2021, 1 billion. 1 billion.
No, but I'm saying for the Vision Zero funding reduction, it says a reduction of 7.1 million. Is that 7.1 million of 8 million, or is that 7.1 million of 10 billion? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, that would be helpful to know what the percentages are so that we can make.
But it is meaningful that there is no line saying reduction of asphalt, right? These are the only reductions.
Well, that's a very good point. Hey, Martin, can you mute yourself? Thanks. Thank you.
So what is interesting is that it doesn't say, oh, we're not going to repair that bridge. We are not going to not cover, not build this, not build that, whatever else they have, right? These are the cuts. And indeed, they did it on purpose to get us really excited so that we go to our elected officials and we say, no way, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of a gamesmanship here.
Right. No, and I think part of my point is that this isn't putting it in perspective for us. And so we had a better perspective on what these numbers are in relationship to other things. You're right. Like, are they going to keep painting racing stripes down the West Side Highway? What's that budget? I don't know.
No, it's very hard to go in all the details and all the project. I mean, I
understand.
I did it a long time ago, and then it becomes, then you say, well, you shouldn't do this, you should do that, etc. Then you have a whole budget negotiation, and I don't think they are inviting us to have that. We have to go pretty high level saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is right, we don't care about that, etc. Okay, well, send me your notes. I will be going Tuesday with the input. And if you have additional thoughts, send me your thoughts, okay? Janine, can you close this? And what else do we have? That's it, right? Yes.
That's all. The rest is just old or new business.
Right.
Can we, if we have something new business, can we discuss that? Can I?
Sure. What is new business? Who wants to talk about new business?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I just want to say that for me, the silver lining during this pandemic, which there's not too many, has been peace and quiet of no cars and trucks. It's been amazing. And obviously, I'm sure everybody else would agree, although for the most horrible reason. I think the no traffic and also nature, hearing birds chirping and whatnot, I don't think we as city dwellers get to hear. Anyway, what I wanted to discuss really has to do with before the pandemic, which was an issue. So I just want to make sure it's okay that I could discuss that, which is there's a chronic problem going on 16th Street, and I've reached out to Speaker Corey Johnson's office about it, and they've been trying to help, but he also recommended that I speak to you guys. 16th Street, as you know, is a turnoff from the West Side Highway. It also is where Google Building, Chelsea Market, Maritime Hotel, Dream Hotel, Western Beef is. They have commercial sanitation trucks that come to pick up their waste, and in the wee hours of the night, they come plowing down our streets, and not right now because all those businesses that I just mentioned, maybe with the exception of Western Beef, are all shut down, but they are oversized commercial sanitation trucks that are very noisy. And on several of the blocks, on my block, for example, there are 2 speed bumps that are on our block, and it makes it even noisier. So I have been for years sleeping with air conditioning and fans to kind of drown out the noise. What Speaker Corey Johnson's office told me was that they had passed some kind of zones, assigned zones that that these waste haulers can go down and that they should be sticking to that. I kind of don't understand why they're going down these side streets, especially when 14th Street became only usable to trucks and not vehicles, why they would go down these residential blocks every single day. There is a large amount of commercial waste at the Google building, at these hotels, etc. So, you know, if you're going to have this test pilot program that is just restrictive to buses and trucks only, then why do they continue to, you know, come down these side streets that are very narrow and loud? And yeah, so that's, I'm just wondering if there's something that can be done to
have I'm sorry, Carrie, do you have the list of the specific companies that have cart haulers coming across?
No, but
could you
get
that list? Could you get that list, because the CB4 could send a letter to each of those people. We know people at, you know, Google, etc., and say, you know, why don't you talk to your.
Yeah, and I was, you know, I know that it's those particular businesses because now with COVID-19, with Google not being open anymore and Chelsea Market not being open anymore and Dream Hotel, there's still garbage, but there's so much less, and it's so much now, it's been so reduced.
So what we need from you is the name of an address of the companies,
okay,
where it's coming from, and I think we can send some administrative letters to those people and say we would appreciate if you could notify your your carting company to use 14th Street instead of any other street.
The name and address of the the commercial haulers, the waste companies, or the businesses?
No, the businesses.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Can definitely do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't you do that, and we'll start.
And my other question is with the, I mean, now it's really not an issue because there's barely any cars or anything on the street, but with the L train being completed earlier than expected, and with the test pilot program of 14th Street, when things go back to quote unquote normal, we here on 16th Street have had a significant increase. And I know there was a company that the DOT, I've been at meetings where they did show us graphs and things of showing an increase on this particular block of, you know, an increase. How are we going to address that? Because when things go back to normal, you know, we got the brunt of it. If they couldn't turn down 14th Street, these cars, they were going down 16th Street. So what is the plan moving forward?
When everything comes back to normal, we'll pick up where we were, and we will continue to advocate, you know, mitigation for your streets.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to happen until it comes back to normal.
Right. Well, so far, right now, it's not a problem. So far, so good.
Okay. Thanks, Carrie. Somebody else?
Thank you very much.
Somebody else? Yes, Alan.
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. This is new old business. It concerns the intersection of 23rd and 10th Avenue, which a couple of months back, they changed the lighting system and the turn signals there. So what we have now is going on 23rd Street, west to east. Well, let me start all over again. Pedestrians crossing 10th Avenue on the north side of 23rd Street have about 6 seconds to get across 10th Avenue, 6 or 7 seconds to get across 10th Avenue before the light changes. When the light changes, to green and people are still in the intersection or about to cross over and is still crossing over, traffic goes in both directions on the green, and people and vehicles are still making left-hand turns as the light turns green. So there's no red left turn signal. All right, I don't want to confuse you. So what happens?
We got it.
At the end, what happens at the end of the whole cycle, right? Then the green light comes on. However, the traffic going from west to east has been turning left into pedestrians crossing. Now, I think I brought this up a while back, and we were hoping to have DOT go in there and change this, where when the light turns green for east-west traffic, there would be a red left turn signal from 10th Avenue onto 23rd, preventing cars from turning into pedestrians who are crossing the north side of 23rd Street, and then turning green when the light turns red.
Alan, we have done better already on that, right? And the question is, what is DOT going to do about it? So Colleen,
right.
Can you give us an
But
update?
I'll raise another situation. Since there's been less traffic, and considering the fact that New Yorkers generally don't look at the lights when they want to cross, when you're going from the south side of 23rd Street over to the north side of 23rd Street, especially on the east side of 10th Avenue, you see the cars on the north side of 23rd Street stopped because the light is red. But on the other side of 10th Avenue, that light is still green.
So Alan, I do recall that we did receive a resolution from Community Board 4, and I jotted it down. I'll follow up and I'll see if we responded. I don't think we did, but I'll check the status of where we are with that lighting sequence and if we can make any changes there. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was easy.
Yeah. Hey, and I just wanted to
sorry
respond.
For the long story.
That's okay. When you mentioned 23rd and 10th, I know where you were going. And I just wanted to get back to Carrie on two things. Number one, if these are private carters that are making deliveries or that are coming there late at night making noise, there is the big industry. The community board can send a letter to them letting them know about this as well, and they can address that. And the other thing is that we do plan to come back to the community board to give an update on the 14th Street project. So we'll be in touch with the community board on that one, okay?
What is the BIC? I'm sorry, what is that?
I think it's called Business Improvement something, but they're the ones who deal with the private carters.
Okay, so what does that mean as far as?
I will give Janine the information. I'll look it up and I'll send it to Janine. So you can reach out to Janine on that, okay?
Sure. I do have one other question too. Do you know about these little Revel scooters that have been placed around New York City recently?
So because of the pandemic, Revel, they have been, out there promoting their scooters, and I'm told that a lot of essential workers have been using it. So I know they gave presentations to CB7 and I think CB8. So if the community board is interested in a presentation, they can reach out to Rebel and have that done. It's a very good presentation, very detailed. But they've been very instrumental in providing services to essential workers coming into the city.
All right, so it's just during the pandemic, or is it?
Well, I know they've been very much out there during the pandemic. I don't know what the status is after that. I don't know much about them in terms of their operating,
okay.
their operation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else, David?
Yes, just quickly an update on the congestion pricing. I believe is being held up by the federal government, the Trump administration. I read somewhere, I think it's Fleet Blogs, that our House of Representatives, our senators can do a push to get this congestion pricing passed. or override Trump and the dot. I don't know if that's correct or not, or I might have done a misread. But is there any way we as a committee could send a letter to the federal House of Representatives, meaning Nadler and Gillibrand and Schumer, or is that something we can't touch?
We could do that. I think it's a little premature at this point where the economy is trying to pick up. I think we should wait a little later for that. I don't know what everybody,
all right.
But we have a lot of things on the table right now, which I think we need to focus on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm ready to call motion to adjourn. Is everybody okay with that?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Great discussion, really.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good meeting, good meeting.
Stay safe, everybody.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.